You are listening to the Speak Podcast.
The podcast featuring talks from Speak, a public speaking platform for people with ideas and stories.
Produced by Launchpad 516 Studios. Welcome to the Speak Podcast, produced by Launchpad 516 Studios. New episodes available every week on all your favorite podcast platforms.
Speak is a public speaking platform for people with ideas and stories. Each Speak Talk features three key moments: the moment of truth, the moment of transformation, and the moment of impact.
We host pop-up events all over the world, and now we are bringing our talks to your device. Our speakers are stepping onto the stage and into the spotlight, and now onto this podcast.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of the Speak Podcast. This is a very special bonus episode. I am your host for this episode, George Andriopoulos, the architect and one of the co-leaders here at Speak. And I'm here with one of my good friends now, Rob Esposito. Rob was one of our speakers at Speak Freedom a couple of years back in July of 23. At an incredible event. So I wanted to sit down with Rob just to talk about his talk, the genesis of how that all came about, and how sharing this story for him has led to just so many different things that have sort of, opened up a new gateway in his world of different things that he's doing. So we'll jump right in. Rob, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with how this all came about, and I'll let you kind of just start and tell everybody what you do and talk about your business for a minute.
So I started a moving company. I wanted to help with the fragmented transitioning out of a home that takes place as far as when somebody needs to leave a house. There's so many different services they need. And, God bless, I've been successful with it in my company. And I just started doing podcasts right before we met, and you spoke to me about the Speak event.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Yeah, so you were referred by one of our channel partners, Bill Corbett, who
Correct.
Contacted me, and he's like, this guy has an incredible story. Hasn't really done public speaking before, but he's like, he's coachable. He could totally do this. And, jumping into it, I got to say, like, working with you and a guy like you is one of my favorite things about this platform and what we've done here, right? Because to me, like, and I happen to be the one producing that event and working with the speakers. To me, when somebody's out of their comfort zone, hasn't done a certain thing before, like public speaking is a big deal when you haven't done it before. You know what I mean? And I know you speak in different capacities, but this is a different kind of talk. You coming in, you were from day one a student. Like you were all about, please, help me, show me. Here's my story. I want to show it to you, and you help me kind of tweak it and advice for getting on stage and what to do. And to me, those are the most successful talks that go on stages, whether it's a Speak Talk, a TED Talk, or a keynote talk. So talk about that process for you and how that felt.
Yeah, so actually, it's funny you say that. I had great success with public speaking, but completely untrained, like raw.
Yeah.
And I had experienced that a couple times in my life. I had like a year or two of acting, but I didn't really take to it. And as far as speaking goes, when I came to your stage, I had done a speech in front of like the entire fire department, accepting an award from my dad, mayor, archbishop, at like 22. And it is still talked about to this day. I had great success, but it was raw. And you look at the way I'm acting now that I know the stuff that I learned from you, and I see it, although it went great. And in other facets with business, just kind of being me, it's worked. But now in a professional setting, in front of an audience that's coming to hear a story, I loved the education I was getting. I tried to absorb every minute of it because the techniques and the things you were saying were completely out of my comfort zone. Even the fact of not moving or not having a sip of water and just being there quietly until you look up, and all those like key things to make Speak the story and the way the story comes out what it is.
Yeah. And that's a cool thing. For me, I had been speaking probably for about 10 years on stages before I called myself a public speaker.
Absolutely.
Industry stuff, right? Like, yeah, and the small stuff, and you get up on stage and talk about your business, and that's easy, right? I was always the guy, like, give me 3 or 4 bullet points and I could talk for hours. Yes. But a more structured thing, when I learned it, because I had a mentor that taught me years ago, hey, you have to write this thing out. You have to memorize it. You can riff if you're that kind of person, but it will be that much better if you sit, put the work in, memorize it, you're deliberate about it. And for me, it changed my life as a public speaker. I didn't call myself a speaker until that point. And I noticed with you, the genesis of that growth as the one that was coaching you was just day to day, because you put in the work. I mean, we had meetings. We've always been the platform when we're producing an internal event or any of our outside producers, we put in the time with our speakers, and the more they want it, we're always willing to give it. So you were the guy that was always like, can you sit for a meeting? Can you sit for a meeting? Can we go over this draft? Can we go over and it was a pleasure to work with you, and then to see that growth from the end, how you kind of streamline that story, what it looked like day one when you wrote it and what it looked like when you got on stage, man.
Tell me about that.
Oh, we were so proud of you, man. What did it feel like to start with that raw story and then to kind of walk into the event the day of with something that was very similar yet very different?
So to your first point on a work ethic wise, like, I remember the way you guys broke down deadlines and stuff, and then kind of had to like check on people. Like, to me, that was kind of a joke. Like, I already had 5 pages extra. Like, yeah. I remember like being like, is this real? But that's what you have to do. And I get that, especially as a business owner. I love advice from people that, whether I want it or not, I take it. And if it's not the person I want to be like, I take the advice to not do it.
Yeah.
With you guys, you were honest, and I love that. I can handle the bad, because if I don't get the bad, I'm just going to go really far into the wrong direction, So the fact that you guys were willing to give it to me, and even the bad, even the criticisms or the changes, I don't consider them bad. I consider them what they were, and I actually liked it because it made total sense. There was one point where you said to me, like, you're going to come off as like a wizard. You don't want to do that. Like, you could tell it through a story. And the way you broke that down was so helpful to me, because I use that now.
It was, what we do is just kind of provide the vehicle for you guys to get out there and tell these important stories. And so as much as it seems like we were a tremendous help in that, it's nothing without you guys like putting in that work and really caring. I always tell people that want to public speak, don't do it because you feel like, oh, this is the next move for your business, or you want to self-promote. Do it because you have an important story, right? And we always kind of tell people, they go, well, I have this huge story. How do I break it down into a speak talk with the moment of truth, moment of transformation, moment of impact? And I always kind of tell them, like, listen, that story is going to be the basis of all the public speaking you do for the rest of your life. It's how you interpret that story for the specific event that you're at. And you did an incredible job of that. So Rob's talk, which happened at Speak Freedom in July of 2023, is called Free Will, My Most Appreciated Gift. So talk to us, Rob, a little bit about the story behind that talk, and what it was that made you want to get up on stage and give that talk.
My internal mission has always been to help. I'm a giver more than anything. And I wanted to tell people, like, yes, it sucks, but you can still do it. And it is real. And there is possibilities out there. And as frustrated as you are, and I learned years after, by passing comments like, hey, the symbolic brick through the windshield. Like, we have that too in the office. But I really did throw a brick through the windshield. But hearing people say that was like, okay, so everybody, even the people in the, white collar suits are saying that, or thinking that. And that was profound to me. And that was very satisfying to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gave that talk. I remember there was like a palpable energy in that room. You had a lot of supporters in that room, which was great. It's our speakers are the ones that fill up the rooms on those pop-up stages, of course, and that leads to some of the bigger shows that we plan to do in the future. Talk about the minute you were done with that talk, because it was funny, man. Like, you're a guy like me that, like, you go into your business ventures, whatever you do, and you're proud, you're courageous, you're not afraid to jump into new things or whatever. But at the same time, I saw that energy on stage. There was the nerves and, leading up to, because this is a different kind of talk. I still get that when I get up on stage, but you do the thing, you had a great reception in the room, talk is over. How did that feel to you?
Initially, it felt great. The next day, I had a conversation, which, because of that, sparked everything that's going on now. And it was my partner who called me, who was my mentor. And I just want to go back for 1 second. The thing that we discussed in this conversation, I remember, it's one of those moments, like life is lived in a moments where I remember the bridge I was driving under when I said this word. You know what I mean? Like, it sticks out in my mind. And the thing about Speak that I love so much is, and this is what we talked about in the conversation leading up to what I'm about to say, is like how cool or how unique the experience was. Even for him, he was a 60-year-old man. And we discussed how, like, we have all these forms of storytelling now, and everything's best told by a story, but it's movies, it's music, it's art. And it all comes down to, hundreds of years ago, sitting by a fire, telling stories. And the idea of the platform of Speak, which we really kind of got into in that conversation, was this is what it's bringing it back to. And that's what we loved about it. We were both agreeing.
Yeah.
And he was calling to congratulate me. He was calling to say he was impressed. And he said, why are you doing this? And I right away was like, it's one of those things in life that I don't know, but I know I'm supposed to be, and I know I'll find out.
Yeah.
And there's only certain people you can say that to, and he's 100% one of them.
Yeah.
And when I said that, he said, what do you want to be, like an author? And I was like, no, not at all. I'm not somebody who lies. Like, I say what it is, and every fiber in me felt like I was lying to him, and he's the last person I'd lie to. So, like, I have so much respect for him. So I was like, you know what? I did used to write screenplays and in my teens, and I studied acting, but I wasn't into the acting side. I was always like a writer, I always, like in a networking group, if there's something goes wrong, they'll flip over my placemat and be like, get to work, I need a speech. You know what I mean? And I don't even have to write. It's like, it's almost like mumbling, but it just comes out. And that's what sparked all of this.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I love that, man.
Conversation.
I love that. So post-event, Rob became a huge supporter of Speak, and we love when our speakers, our published speakers who become part of our family during those events, continue to support and grow. But I've particularly been so amazed at what has happened since then. You and I have had a number of conversations. You were there for Speak Growth and supported us. Your company supported us for that event. And subsequently, we've talked about the news of the book deal and all this stuff that's happening, and more recently, stuff I've been seeing on social media, which is crazy. So talk about what's happened since Speak, and how that all sort of happened.
Sure. You mentioned Speak Growth. Right before Speak Growth, I don't remember the name. It had to do with disability.
Speak Neurodiversity.
Speak Neurodiversity. Yeah. So there's a guy in a 100-person room that I know very well, and for over 7 years have called the smartest guy in the room. Very bashful, not somebody that will promote themselves.
Yeah.
I happen to see, because I follow everything you guys do, that he was going up. He has a disabled son. And because of that, a bunch of people went, and a bunch of people learned a story about somebody we loved that was truly amazing.
Yeah.
So to go back on how Speak is, like, that's the power. You're very close to somebody, and you have no idea, and nobody would have told you, and he wouldn't have even told you to come.
Yeah.
And then you hear a story, and you're like, oh my God.
That was an incredible story.
Incredible story.
That was Robert Valley Jr. at
Correct.
Speak Neurodiversity, and his talk was called Autism Dad Esquire. It was the talk of his pregnant wife years ago having medical trauma. I'm pretty sure almost dying, and then giving birth to
His son.
Robert Jr. and Robert the third, I guess, and Robert, his son, is an incredible kid. I know Robert through the Nicholas Center, which is how we started to Speak Neurodiversity. We worked with them to do the event. Robert actually is one of the co-hosts of another podcast we produce called Agents of Humanity. So it's amazing how this stuff all.
And because I sent out the email about it, I showed up there, and I just want to say for me, I showed up there with maybe 4 to 7 people that came along.
Yeah.
And I was legitimately dying at the time. Like, I didn't know it, but I was in severe pain. And I went because of a double support, and I had to go. And I wanted to go, but I was not feeling like going. And the first 10 seconds, my entire body had chills. Like, I was so, like, befuddled by his speak in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I was not expecting any of it.
Yeah.
So it was really a great experience.
It was powerful, man.
It was.
It was powerful, yeah.
So, yeah, as I said, I'm always a giver. I wanted to help, and I wanted to help business owners. That's where I thought my mission was, and I do believe my mission is. But I also see that, like I said, with the fragmentation of the transitioning, later on I saw it's the emotional combined with the logistical transition. And in order to start writing, I had a plan to write a how-to book about moving, self-publish it, buy it off myself, give it to my estimators. I would have it as a competitive edge. And then in a year or two, I would take the book that had sales, because I'm the one buying it, and put it with other publications I had and try to broker a book deal on business and entrepreneurship. And like 2 weeks before I was gonna do that, I had a random lunch with an old friend, and the next day, unbeknownst to me, I got a call. And he said, I hope you don't mind. I explained your concept to a publisher, and she wants to talk to you. And it led to a 5-book contract. And everything since has been like doors smashing open beyond what I could believe.
Love it.
Yeah. It's like when you have a mission to help, the universe just like parts.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
I love it. I love it. So talk to us about the book, name of the book, when it's dropping, and all that.
The book is Nobody Moved Without Reading This. And it was a 10,000 word book when it got picked up. I hired a scholar in like Britain to be my ghostwriter to bring it to 80,000 words. And I, like 2 weeks before I was gonna self-publish it, I publish it, hand it in. I started reading it, and it was not what I was looking for. It was a real intense moment for me because I'd done a lot of work and I absolutely hated it. And from there, I pretty much around the clock rewrote it, all 80,000 words, restructured it. It is filled with colorful, funny memes. It is super relatable.
Yeah.
And I've had a therapist tell me it's the best psychological book they've read. I've had a business owner tell me it's their top 10 business book that they're going to hand out to loan. And I said, it's not a business book. And he's like, it's a business book. I'm just really happy with what was done in those 8 weeks where, I mean, I was working like crazy and writing around the clock. And the structure that came out of it is, it goes horror story, advice, hacks, conclusion, bonus tip, expert. And the entire book, it does that for about 20 chapters and then some, prologue, epilogue. It's got a few celebrity features. We have a cabinet member feature, I'm proud to say now.
Wow.
And it's got overarching themes, and it's real. And it's almost like a book you could apply to anything you do in life and say, all right, this is a great book for speaking, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's whatever you're doing, you kind of relate to like the underlying and overlying morals.
Yeah. I love that, man. When is this dropping?
So in the last 2 weeks, I had moved Dee Snider, and we worked out that he was going to film a commercial. So the book was actually accidentally sent to pre-sale early because of a rock star, because Newsday picked up the commercial.
Yeah.
So it's on pre-sale now, and it's the whole concept behind it is anybody in real estate, instead of giving a closing gift, because I was always lamenting about the idea of a closing gift that's futile, anybody in real estate can buy a customized 50-pack of the books. They could put their logo or headshot on the first page, their company info, give them out to everybody upon client acquisition, and then they'll have this book that, one, changes their life and prepares them for something nobody's preparing them for, and then hopefully they'll have it to loan a friend who's moving and your name's there.
Right.
So that's already being sold, the custom packs, and the public release is for the singles will be January 15th for audiobook, paperback, and hardcover.
Amazing. So we're going to put the links for that in the show notes to this. I'm not sure when this episode is dropping. It'll be before the release. We'll put it in the show notes. We're going to put the link to Rob's Speak Talk in the show notes here. Rob, one last question before we wrap up. You know, this thing is for people with ideas and stories, and I love how you getting on this kind of stage has sparked so many changes in your business and in your life. And you know, you mentioned before, one of my favorite things about working with you, man, like you're unassuming, right, when it comes to what's going to come out of your mouth and on paper. And I remember reading your first draft going like, this dude is like super deep, man. Like, and I remember saying, I was like, this is like too deep. This is too intellectual for some of our audiences. You got to kind of like, you know, talk on their level. That being said, man, all this experience that you've had, what do you say to somebody that has an important story that's just kind of sitting on it?
So many people I come across want to write a book, are writing a book, always said they were going to write a book, or would love to speak, would love to tell something. And I mean, everybody does have a story. It's all about action. Like we go home and we watch TV, just write it down, just do it and see where it goes. Because like everything in life, the dots do connect, but you have to have the insight to connect them because they only connect going backwards. And put the pen to paper or the keyboard in 2024 and just start. And once you start, make it a routine.
The new book, Nobody Move Without Reading This, drops January 15th. Link in the show notes. Rob, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of the Speak family, brother.
Appreciate it, bro.
We'll see you guys next time.
The Speak Podcast is brought to you by Launchpad 516 Studios. Executive produced by Fred P. Banning,
Jason Martin,
and George Andriopoulos. Our theme song, Champions Day, is by Lupus Nocti. Incidental music, Melting Places, is by Andres Cantu. Music and sound effects licensed through Epidemic Sound. The Speak Podcast is hosted with Podbean.
make sure to subscribe to this feed wherever podcasts are available and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts while you're at it. Follow Speak at Speak_event on Twitter and at Speak Event on all other social media platforms.
Visit our website, speakevent.com, for upcoming events, channel partner, sponsorship, and speak at work opportunities.
And follow all the great podcasts produced by Launchpad 516 Studios.